Let's get to the news now and let's talk about what's going on. So the United States is actively preparing for war with China and actively ready for war in Ukraine to totally fail. Team Biden is telling Team Zelensky, hey, you better launch that spring offensive that we've been hearing so much about. You're going to launch that spring offensive that's going to take back territory from Russia. You're going to take back Crimea. You're going to take back the eastern Ukraine, the Donbass region, which is now under Russian control. You better do it now. Or we're walking away. That's essentially the message coming out of the Biden administration about Ukraine. Wow, what an about face. But at the same time, they are actively preparing for war against China, running all sorts of war games over the past 24 hours. We'll get to that, all of that in a second. And the media is in lockstep, and the House of Representatives is in lockstep for war with China, or a provocation of a war with China. But today, President Biden has officially announced that he's running for president again today. He held a big speech in Washington, D.C. to announce he's running for re-election. Thousands of people showed up. There was tons of applause. We have video of President Biden's announcement today running for president for 2024. Watch.
Today, it will come as no surprise to any of you, I'm announcing my candidacy for re-election to the United States Senate.
He looks so good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong video. In fact, there was no speech at all today. There was no applause. There were no thousands of people. There was no re-election speech then followed by, hey, I'm getting on an airplane and I'm going to go and start doing campaign events, which is historically what has always happened. He'll pop up in Ohio. He'll go to Iowa. He'll suddenly be popping up all over the place on message with a message that they're going to carry around. None of that. Because the guy can't speak. The guy has dementia. The guy cannot put two sentences together. And so his campaigns built an entire highly produced, polished, like teaser trailer for the announcement of him running in 2024. I've never seen anything like this. Watch.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But you know, around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes from the very wealthy, dictating what healthcare decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote.
Lots of Kamala in this video, too. Kamala, like every other shot's like Kamala. Vice
When I
President.
ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too.
Yeah. So that's enough, because it goes on for like another minute and a half, and it's the same thing, like someone playing piano music, sad music, happy music.
I got really scared in the middle there when the music got all dark and mysterious.
And MAGA?
Like
The MAGA
very hopeful that-
extremists.
yeah. I hid under my desk. I was very frightened, very frightened.
So let's just analyze this for a second here, and then we'll move on and talk about China and talk about Ukraine, because there's a couple of things. Number one, no mention of inflation. Like, I'm going to ask you right now, maybe we can put up a poll here in the chat as you guys are watching live. Like, what is the number one issue for you guys right now at home watching? Is it food prices? Is it inflation? Is it that your paycheck doesn't go as far to pay your bills and to put food on your table? Arguably, that's probably going to be the number one issue for most of you, right? It is for our family. It is for most families. And so there's no mention of that. This video is totally aimed at the base, his Democratic base, which has been fractured at best anyway. A number of Democrats in recent polling say they do not want him to run. So what did they pick in this video? Abortion, right off the top. Abortion, and voting rights. Like, that's what he's running on. voting rights
and MAGA extremism. That he alone can combat MAGA extremism when he's the one who sort of launched this as a platform. And even let's for a second pretend that is a major threat to the nation. What has he done then? What has he done so far other than name it?
Can you name MAGA extremism? I don't know if you've driven down like the streets of San Francisco, if you see what is actually causing, drive down the streets of Chicago. Is it MAGA extremism that's causing all of the violence? I don't think so. So no mention of this, was a total video towards the base of the party. And furthermore, they've also, it's odd launch time of this video as well, and this announcement, given this week you have this big congressional debate over the debt ceiling. So a lot of focus this news will sort of go out the window, and it's going to be a focus on like, we're going to raise the debt ceiling once again. We're going to battle back, default on America's debts. What's going to do that to the US dollar? Like, these are the big stories that are facing Washington right now. This is going to get lost in the mix.
And did you see, I don't know if you saw the link that I sent you, but the DNC says they're not going to participate in any debates in 2024.
Yeah. So the days of Joe Biden taking on Sarah Palin, which was must-watch TV. I enjoyed that, right? Because Joe Biden at the time, was described as very wonky. He could hold his own, he could speak in complete sentences, and he could remember facts and figures pretty well. I just want to go back to this point that you just made about MAGA extremists. I lost it. David was saying something.
Oh, just like, the biggest threat, talking about the biggest threats. I talk about Chicago and I talk about San Francisco and these open air drug markets and all of this.
Yes. So consider this for a second, because so many Republicans had become, we called them single issue voters over abortion. And now we see that the Democratic Party is sort of trying to recreate that through single issue voters through abortion on the flip side. It's almost like a negative image, right? Because so many Republicans, there were plenty of Republicans who weren't comfortable with Trump and his sort of lifestyle and the models and the multiple marriages and things like that. But they were single issue voters on abortion. Now Democrats think, those are useful types of voters. Can we harness that and just go all in on keeping abortion? And it does seem to be a useful political tactic.
It is, but just for the base, because again, 100 million Americans don't vote for either of these corrupt parties. So you're leaving all of these people out of the mix who aren't concerned about this at all. What they want is a safe country. What they want is a prosperous country. What they want is to be able to provide for their family, and they want security. I mean, at the end of the day, and you don't have that.
Yes, but there is a navel-gazing contingency of TikTokers who want to just vote in order to speak for women's rights. And they legitimately feel like they are speaking for women's rights through this vote, even though I can make the argument quite easily that women have lost many rights under the Biden administration, including the rights to sports and the rights to single-sex spaces. But these people feel like it is something they can do to speak up for abortion and free access to abortion. And so they will rile up beyond the base, I think. Beyond the base now is this, I want to say, like, let's call them altruistic women's right TikTokers. They feel
gone
like
are the days of the soccer mom as like the targeted demographic. Now it's fake altruistic TikTok moms.
Well, they believe they're being altruistic. And they're really riled up for their daughters and abortion's rights. And it continues to, the algorithm feeds them things about like hands off my uterus type stuff. I think that it's bigger than all that. And I think that that's why this is so strategically placed, these ads.
So that's the big announcement. Again, I just wanted to sort of look at the optics of this, right? He doesn't give a speech. He doesn't launch like a big campaign event tour where he's landing and talking, because he can't string sentences together. And this is who the Democrats are putting up. And I will say, you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. running. You've got Marianne Williamson, who are now going to primary against him. That will be interesting to watch. But, oh boy, I mean, the deep state absolutely wants Joe Biden to be the president of the United States. The deep state, the deep military industrial complex, it's very, very, very difficult to beat that. right? So guys, this is an opportunity. You know, I don't know who you plan to vote for, what you're thinking in your brain, but we've all got to make a point of getting a message out and stopping this type of nonstop warmongering presidents of the United States, this continued warmongering. So I was looking today, we are actively in 9 different wars right now. President Biden is a warmonger, and he's literally and arguably a war criminal, right? So in charge of 9 wars. No mention of that. No mention at all of that. I'm battling for the soul of America. Here's an idea. Get out of all of these countries. The only person we featured on the show who last week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced for president, said he's going to close all the military bases around the world and bring the troops home. I was like, what? Did I just hear that?
Yeah.
So the military-industrial complex does not want that. They're going to do everything they can in their power to make sure that Robert F. Kennedy doesn't get in there.
And he's given more money to Ukraine than he's done like, how much has the United States got? Like anything for infrastructure, anything, like Ukraine has gotten more.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And that's on top of the war budget.
Yeah, 118 billion is what we know about, right? But it's way higher than that. So this morning, we learned that the United States, speaking of wars and where we're going, the United States, this morning, we learned that the United States ran through its biggest war exercises yet in preparation for war with China. So all of this is coming together, guys. Like President Biden's launching his re-election campaign, and we are ramping up for war. These things work in lockstep, in tandem, right? And this happened a few hours ago in the Philippines. On South Island, south of Taiwan, U.S. prepares for conflict with China. Hundreds of U.S. Marines, U.S. Army soldiers participated in military exercises on the Philippine island of Bataan, just over 100 miles across the Bashi Channel from Taiwan. The drills are part of the Balikatan exercise, which is being touted as the largest ever joint military exercise between the United States and the Philippines. And of course, they come after the U.S. inked a deal expanding its military presence in the Southeast Asian nation. Of course, additional military bases that the Biden administration has just managed to do. All of this, of course, is part of Washington's plan for a future conflict with China. So massive amounts of soldiers participating in these military exercises, jets, aircraft, HIMARS. They even brought HIMARS to be able to hit Chinese targets hundreds of miles away. That was part of these drills. All of it as part of a gear up for this war. And saying, and they're all throwing around this number of 2027. Like, we're going to go to war by 2027. Like, they're all saying this now. Like, this is the target date for war with China.
Is this like the next pandemic? Like they've got it planned to the year? That's
it's like they've got it written down.
Thinking there.
I mean, and because look at this, back in Washington, the House of Representatives launched a China war games. This is what the House of Representatives is doing while President Biden is actively pushing for war against China, using their own board games. Look at this. This is how they were even using little toys and little cards, and on the floor of the House of Representatives, planning for war with China. And by the way, they say 2027. Watch this. This is ABC News covering this. Watch.
At how members on the House China Committee are gaming out war scenarios. In the sky, on the sea, China staging combat exercises, a show of force, a warning that a potential blockade of Taiwan could be coming. The Chinese army even releasing this simulation of how they'd attack the nearby island, a self-governed democracy that China claims as its own territory. But on Capitol Hill this week, lawmakers staged their own simulation.
Tonight is not about a desire for war.
Oh, sure.
It's certainly not about playing frivolous games.
Oh, sure.
It's about prevent war games.
China Committee Chairman Mike Gallagher and Ranking Member Raja Krishnamurthy set up the exercise with the Center for New American Security.
This game is going to be a Chinese invasion of Taiwan set in 2027.
What exactly do we know right now
she
about
says.
their mobilization effort?
Members from both sides of the aisle coming together, politics set aside. There's Virginia Republican Robert Whitman and Massachusetts.
They're coming together over war. If there's one thing they all can get together on, it's that they hate China. They want a war with China.
Democrat Jake Auchincloss, the members taking on the role of advisors to the president.
What have we communicated to expats and students from China right now?
This is part of what you get to decide.
That's Stacey Pettijohn, a senior fellow from CNAS, acting as the game master.
You know, like if I play Dungeons and Dragons with my kids, it's a lot different than this.
Well, I was just going to say,
master.
in Hunger Games, the game master dies.
This is like her job. Here's what
Hope
I do.
I didn't give anything away there.
Mommy, what do you do? Well, here's what I do. I actively plan wars with foreign countries, and then I bring it to Congress, and I sit down on the floor of the House of Representatives, and I set up board games, and I invite all the members of Congress, and I invite ABC News to come in with their film cameras and film the whole thing and put it out on their night. It's total propaganda. That's what I do to my kids. Oh, Mommy, that's really great. That's what they're doing. These are war games that they're doing, literally planning for war with China by 2027. Mapped out with, like, they're playing Risk or Stratego, by the way.
With people's lives. And, you know, when they say 2027, my first thought goes to, my son will be 17. Like, he's getting close to draft age. These are the things that like scare me. And they're playing as if these are his peers. These are, you know, kids and their lives, and they're just making them game pieces.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they say war is coming in 2027. This is what the war games show. Where have I heard this before, though? Oh, right. NBC News also put together their own war games a few months ago with China on a whole segment planning. And guess what? Planning for war in 2027. This is all about connecting the dots, guys. Like, what are we not being told? So NBC News, Meet the Press, does this whole war games planning session on the floor of the House of Representatives. They're doing a whole war games planning session, 2027, mapping it out with members of Congress. This is all part of a plan. Watch this Meet the Press segment.
And we wanted to know more about these war games. What do they look like? How do they unfold? What would it take to win, especially in this moment we're in and what's happening in Ukraine? So to find out, we worked with the Gaming Lab at the Center for a New American Security, CNAS. This is a think tank that specializes in national security. CNAS convened two teams to fight it out here in our Washington studio. The blue team, a group of defense experts, members of Congress, and a retired Air Force general who played the role of American defense officials on the National Security Council, advising the United States.
And then the scary red team?
And the red team.
Oh,
China
there they are.
Experts. And the CEO of CNAS played the part of China's Central Military Commission, advising President Xi Jinping.
They look like trouble, all red.
CNAS drafted the terms of the hypothetical conflict, set 5 years from now, in 2027, with China poised to launch a direct attack on Taiwan to force unification after Taiwan had elected new leadership, increasingly defying Chinese pressure.
All right, so 2027, guys. Get ready. All signs pointing to that. So this is all very eerily timed that this comes together right as President Biden is announcing he's running for re-election. Enemy number one is China. Who's out? Russia. Zelensky. They're out. New reports out today showing President Biden pressuring the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, to launch a spring offensive now or start to negotiate a surrender. This, according to Politico. Biden's team fears the aftermath of a failed Ukrainian counteroffensive. The Biden administration is quietly preparing for the possibility that if Ukraine's spring counteroffensive falls short of expectations, critics at home and allies abroad will argue that America has come up short. Time to get out. Time to leave. We are done. Zelensky is finished. We're turning the page and just focusing on China now. That is the message.
And it would seem that the president thought that Ukraine would give his presidency a quick boost, that it might be sort of a quick offensive. They could push Russia out with lots of support, military support, and that he could campaign on his support for Ukraine. That almost never works when you sort of think of a foreign war as a boost for your presidential election. Now, as today I was watching online, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were retweeting Joe Biden's campaign relaunching video and talking about how they thought he was so great. Well, I just would like to remind you what happened when candidate for president Hillary Clinton thought that she could have a nice little war under her belt that would give her a boost to the presidency. In 2011, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, felt that the Arab Spring put sort of egg in the face of the U.S. by rising up against a U.S.-sponsored president. So they decided they could make a better example of Libya by ousting Muammar Gaddafi. They started providing weapons to groups that wanted to overthrow the government, which were incidentally extremists. They were Islamic extremists, but the Obama administration made up this term moderate rebels to disguise the fact that the U.S. was in fact arming radical Islam. And here is how and why Obama and Clinton launched that war with the 2016 presidential election in mind. I like this summary from the book Enough Already by Scott Horton. So I'm going to read you this little bit. He says, reportedly, as they debated it in the White House, Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Staff Admiral Mike Mullen, and National Security Advisor Tom Donilon and his deputy, all of these people, plus Joe Biden, argued they shouldn't start the war. So Joe Biden at the time was against the war in Libya. Robert Gates later claimed to have repeatedly asked, can't I just finish the 2 wars we're already in before we go looking for a third? But he must have miscounted. It was 4 going on 5 at the time, counting Somalia and Pakistan. But this opposition by Gates and the others should have been all the cover Obama needed to back out. But Power, Rice, and Clinton talked him into launching it anyway. Perhaps Obama felt he owed Clinton a favor. You owe a favor, as in,
well, bomb a country.
I'm gonna bomb a country, take down a country for you.
Hey, Barack, I'm wondering if you could. I need a little favor. I'm running for president, and I'm wondering if you could just start a war on my behalf. This is what a phone looks like.
Start a war and let me be the face of it. And then, I mean, she tried. She did many victory laps over the collapse of Gaddafi. And he thought, like, okay, we campaigned hard against each other. You lost. I'm going to give you this one. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into Libya for you. I'm going to ruin their lives. That's what I'm going to do.
What a favor to call in.
What a guy.
Yeah. Oh, Barack.
Okay, let's get back to this. So he felt like he owed it to her. He had assuredly promised her he would support her run for president in 2016. As what was evidenced then and confirmed later, Clinton and her team believed she would be able to run on the short and successful Libyan war in that presidential election. As her unofficial advisors had said to her, we see this later in emails released to the State Department. The fact that Clinton had just lost the presidential primary to Obama, mainly due to her hawkishness on Iraq, had apparently failed to make an impression on her. But because the war in Libya was such shit, by the time 2016 election came around, the Clinton campaign did not dare bring up Libya as any kind of victory. By then, clearly they hoped everyone would just forget about it. So this is the playbook, right? And here is how then Obama went on to go all in, like, yeah, you're my bud. I'm going to give you this country. And how he launched the war in Libya without congressional approval. Says not only did Obama refuse to consult Congress for authorization, he was not even in the country when he ordered the attack, which the Pentagon called Operation Odyssey Dawn. Instead, the president gave a speech from Brazil where he was traveling on unrelated business. And in the speech, Obama falsely claimed that Gaddafi had vowed to murder every civilian in the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi and that his forces were already on their way to do the job if the U.S. did not stop them. He claimed there were 700,000 men, women, and children under threat of imminent extermination and asked Americans to imagine the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, being completely wiped out. The administration also claimed that Gaddafi was bombing peaceful protests and spread the ridiculous propaganda that Gaddafi had given all of his soldiers Viagra so that they could grape without a G every woman and girl they found on the rampage to the east. These were all lies, but they were good enough, and the bombs came raining down. So I present this to you because at the time, in its recent history, Gaddafi knew the United States had turned on him. He knew that they were gunning for him for a political victory, and he offered repeated peace talks. And the president and his cabinet ignored it, and so did the media. And so we can see the parallels to Ukraine so clearly here, right? That there was a politician that thought it would be good for him, dragged along a lot of lives for this, and now is sort of not wanting it anymore when presidential campaign time comes around.
Unbelievable. So we'll see. I mean, this is the playbook right now. Hunter Biden also apparently reportedly hiding out in the White House, avoiding like child care payments and trying to avoid investigation because that could be coming down imminently. So they're trying to like keep him shielded in the White House while they announce for re-election.
I'm just so curious though. Like I'm still kind of hung up on this 2027 thing. Like, what is the significance of that? Like, what's gonna, like, I'm trying to think ahead of like what I know in the future could be happening in 2027 that they would want to coincide a war with China. I mean, it's like,
I think that
it just gives them enough breathing room to carry it out, right? I mean, to turn the page on what they've got going on in Russia, you know, and to really make China the evil empire, right? Because again, as the U.S. dollar continues to decline, it's like they're building up, it's like shaking up a soda bottle, right? They're building up all the pressure right now. They're trying to lay the foundation for the US dollar decline and focusing and really trying to paint China as the enemy. So I think that gives them enough breathing room. I don't know if there's something more nefarious about that date, but boy, they're all on top of this 2027 date.
I think that they reverse engineer the propaganda that they can get across in a certain time. If they could do it faster, they probably would. But I have seen from people I know that work from the government that they have sort of milestones of communication type, like public relations campaigns. Like, can we get these countries to believe this? Or to,
by this date.
Right. And they think it will take a certain amount of time. I think they probably think they can drum up enough anti-China sentiment, scare people enough about human rights campaigns and the Uyghurs and, digital dollars and COVIDism and all of that stuff that by the time 2027 goes around, if all goes to plan, we'll be all in to sending our kids to this type of war.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.